There's a road in the lower hills of Himalayas that the locals of Kurseong avoid after sunset. They call it the Death Road, not because of the steep mountains or the wild animals or the thick forest, but because for generations the people who have known this forest best have told the same story. A boy in a uniform. He appears with the fog and disappears with it. And by the time anyone gets close enough, they realize the boy has no head. And there is a woman in grey who wanders the forest from tree to tree. And those who follow her never come back. The witnesses aren't ghost hunters, they're woodcutters, forest guards, security personnel, men who have spent decades walking this forest. Their accounts span generation, but the description never changes. In 2003, one forest ranger decided to prove the legend wrong. By sunrise, he refused to walk Death Road ever again. Welcome to Graveline Stories. I'm Vivek and I bring you stories of horror, folklore and black magic from India. And it's not just stories, I bring you an entire world that was hidden from you. And I show it to you through stories. Real stories from real people who lived through it. Now before we begin, I'd like you to please subscribe to the channel. If you like the story, the storytelling and my voice, please leave a like. If not, dislike it and tell me what's wrong in the comments and I'll fix it in the next video. Now, without further ado, let's begin. This is the story of Dow Hill's Death Road, and this one hits close to me because its location is really close to my own home. We grew up hearing stories of these hills, and one particular story still sticks to this day. The story of Anil Dutta. He knew the terrain and the history of the land well. By 2003, Anil Dutta had been walking into forest for over 20 years. He was a forest ranger, a man of outdoors, of early mornings, dense woods and vigilance, a man of logic and practical know-how of how the forest works. He knew the forest as well, if not more, than the locals who lived there. The fog came in every evening without fail. It came down from the higher slopes of Himalayas through the pine forest and the tea gardens. Settling over the hills, it had settled there for centuries before the British arrived here. The Lepcha people, the first people to settle in these hills, who called this place Kurseong, the land of white orchids. And now it's called Kurseong. They had always known that the fog at Dow Hill was different, heavier and denser than other local places. But the Lepcha knew that there was something more to the fog than what was visible by naked eyes. Old stories about the fog and the forest, passed on by word of mouth, wasn't uncommon, and the people respected the forest and its inhabitants, whoever they may be. And when the British came, they did not ask the Lepcha what the fog meant. They did not ask what the forest meant either. In the late year of 1800s, a wealthy Englishman settled in a bungalow at Dow Hill with his wife and daughter. The daughter was young, the forest was close, and in the forest there was a young man, a local young man. It's the oldest story in the world, a forbidden love story. Forbidden meetings in the deep forest, the clandestine path between the bungalows and the trees, and the sunny dates along the mountain streams. The father found out eventually. He threatened consequences, violent consequences. The couple continued to meet in the forest anyways. What happened next, the accounts are not precise. They are never precise about these things. What the local memory of Dow Hill holds is this: the girl went into the forest and did not come back out. And after that, in the years that followed, people walking in the deep forest at Dow Hill began to see a figure in grey, a woman. moving between the trees, moving with the urgent, searching quality of someone looking for something they have lost. Those who tried to follow her were lost in the dark. She has been in that forest ever since. The forest keeps what it takes. This is the oldest thing known about Dow Hill, older than any stories that came after. The Lepchas knew it. The colonial residents learned it after paying a price. And something else happened in that same forest in those years. Something that wore the shape of a boy. And most of the sightings happened in one particular spot. The locals called it the Death Road. He had heard the name. He had heard the stories too. The headless boy, the woman in white, the woodcutters who would not go into certain sections of the forest. Anil listened to these accounts, but he was a practical and skeptical man. He found this story hard to believe, like any man would do, but he did not dismiss them outright. He simply took it as folklores and hoaxes. He resided at the Forest Department's guest house on Dow Hill in December 2003, the season when the fog thickened, when the temperature dropped, and the road between the forest office and the school became deserted during the winter holidays. The mist had moved in, and the only sound were the ones that the forest made. It was the season when Dow Hill was at its most itself. In the weeks before December 12th, Anil heard things not from the forest, but from the people around the guest house, the other officials, the local workers and daily laborers whose daily route took them through less walked part of the forest, routes he had used for his own patrols. They shared stories and incidents, happenings at workplaces, incidents when traveling back and forth through the woods, assuming a shared knowledge, filling in details and making assumptions about what it could be. The woodcutters were the ones who came up most often. The death road ran through the section of forest where they worked, the stretch between Dow Hill and the forest office, perhaps a kilometer or so of a path through dense mountain pine, where the tree cover was thick enough that even at midday the light came through in strips and the air had coldness that did not warm even in the summer. The woodcutters had worked these sections for years, and they would not go into certain parts after dark. They knew that something there was waiting, hidden among the fog. It takes away anyone that dared those places after dark, that whoever did dare it did not come back. Something was in it that was not an animal or dangers of terrain. What they had seen, the ones who had seen something, a boy on the road in a school uniform, standing on the death road or walking along it in the fog at hours when no student should have been outside. The first woodcutter who reported it described trying to follow, trying to help. He moved towards the figure. The figure reached the tree line, and then it was simply not there anymore. Disappeared. Gone. The fog rolled in and the figure disappeared as if the fog took it. He had not gone back into that section of the forest since. Other woodcutters told similar accounts, not identical. The detail varied in some ways, and there were many such accounts. Different people at different times. Sometimes the figure was walking, sometimes standing, sometimes just at the edge of the tree line facing the road. But the school uniform was consistent, and the disappearances, sudden and complete, was consistent. Anil listened to these accounts. He did not dismiss them. He was not the kind of person who dismissed things out of hand. He simply considered them as local folklores and beliefs, not something to take at face value. This was his professional framework. He had maintained it until the night of December 12th. That's when Anil's composure broke. The woods are terrifying, but one place stands out even amid that lurking terror of fog and forest. a place which was led by the only clue that the witnesses could take from the sightings of the boy. The uniform that the headless boy wears belongs to Victoria Boys' School. There is something about Victoria Boys' School that needs to be known, and with its history it is deserved. The school was founded in 1879 by Sir Ashley Eden and has went through many renovations. The current building, the one that stands at Dow Hill today, built from stone and brick of colonial institutional architecture with high ceilings and long corridors designed to contain hundreds of boys during term time. During the term time, the corridors are loud, the buildings are full, the ambient sound of an active boarding school, but everything changes in the winter. In December, the school empties. The boys go home, the teachers leave, the ground staff is reduced to a skeleton, and what remains is the building itself. In the winter silence, with the fog pressing against the windows and the pine close on every side, the corridors that was loud with hundreds of children now holding only its own sounds. The creak of old stone contracting in the cold, the wind finding its way through the gaps, the particular resonance of empty space that was not empty for a moment that whole year and is now profoundly and entirely empty. The guards who stay through the winter have their accounts. What they hear are footsteps walking down the corridors they have just confirmed are empty. Away from them and around a corner, they hear voices, children's voices, the murmur of boys talking, not clearly enough to make out words, but clearly enough to be unmistakably human, unmistakably young, coming from rooms that are locked for the winter season and have been locked since the last day of term. They see figures at the windows at night, a face at the window of a closed wing, when the premises should be empty, when no one should be outside. A face at the window, seen at a moment and then gone at the next. They have seen these things consistently enough across enough years that they no longer find them alarming in the simple sense. They have familiarized themselves with the rhythm of the school's winter behavior. They work alongside whatever is in the building in the winter. They do not talk much about it. They do not particularly want to. The school administration maintains officially and consistently that nothing unusual has been reported ever in the campus. The headmaster confirms that no death have ever occurred in the school's history. There is nothing to explain the voices, the footsteps, and the faces at the windows, which makes them, in their quiet persistence, considerably more disturbing. The night began as any other night. Anil Dutta had been working late in the guest house. Paperwork, reports of his evening postings. The December fog came in early that evening, thicker than usual, pressing against the window, thick and murky. The paperwork had been getting on his nerves. He decided to step outside and clear his head. The path outside the guest house was familiar. He had walked it every evening of this posting. It ran along the edge of the tree line towards the road, and in daylight it was pleasant, the kind of walk a man takes to shake off desk work. In the fog, at this hour, it was something else. It wasn't frightening, not yet, simply different, in the way familiar places feel different in the dark. He was perhaps 50 meters from the guest house when he saw the figure. It was on the path ahead of him, 20, perhaps 25 meters away, in which the fog made it clearly visible, but without precise detail. He saw the school uniform first, the Victoria Boys' School's uniform. He knew it by sight. Dark fabric, the cut that had been same for over 100 years. He thought that the boy was lost, a child out alone at this hour in the fog, a child who perhaps needed help. He called out. The figure did not respond. He stepped closer, and what he saw stayed with him for his entire life. The boy had no head. The figure standing on the path in front of him in the school uniform had no head. The figure turned to face him, and Anil Dutta, with 20 years of forest ranging experience and all that practical knowledge that comes with it, ran. He would later say that this was the moment that broke him, not the headlessness that could have been misperceived in the fog, but the turning, the way the body rotated. It was weird. To Anil, it seemed like the entity never realized it never had a head. He made it back to the guest house in a frenzy, panting and out of breath. He locked the doors and sat with his back against the wall furthest from the window. As much distance as possible between him and the outside, as much distance possible from the glass. His instincts screamed at him that if he was spotted by whatever that was outside, he will not exist any longer. He chose what felt the safest place in that room, the corner farthest from the window. But however he tried, there was no peace for him that night. The sound began sometime in the first hour. Footsteps outside on the perimeter of the guest house, the sound of someone walking around the building slowly, as if trying to figure out the layout of the building, trying to find a way in. The footsteps paused outside the window, stayed there for a time that he could not say how long. An hour, a minute, 4 hours, he cannot say. Then the footsteps continued. There were more sounds after that, sounds he could not really say what they were. Sleep did not come for him that night, and it would be a long, terrifying night. When the light began to come very slowly into the fog outside the window, he stayed where he was until he could see the room clearly. And then he sat there a while longer. When a colleague arrived at the guest house later that morning, Anil described what had happened. He recounted everything. It wasn't a dramatic telling of exaggeration, but a factual and detailed report of the incident. His colleague listened, and then without expression, without surprise, he said, "You saw the boy. That means you've truly been to Dow Hill." He didn't say it was a trick of the fog. He didn't say that it was dark outside and the light perhaps played a trick on your eyes. Simply, "You saw the boy. That means you've been to Dow Hill." As if it were an initiation ritual, as if the thing on that path was a threshold, and crossing it, being seen by it, being circled in night by whatever had followed him back, meant a rite of passage, an acknowledgement that you were a true resident of Dow Hill. Anil Dutta never went back that path after dark. He completed his posting, filed his paperwork, and left Kurseong, never to return. When he describes the night of December 12th, it still shakes him to his core, and he says at the end, "It's not just a story, it's a place where something exists, something we don't understand, and maybe we never will." And then in 2014, I went to Kurseong.